My name is Gloria, I'm 72 years old, and I've just pulled off the sweetest revenge of my life. But let's start from the beginning of this story, one that changed not only my fate, but also the fates of my 3 ungrateful children. It all began 45 years ago in the small town of Springfield, Illinois. I was a young widow with 3 kids and $2,000 to my name, everything I had left after my husband Richard died of lung cancer. Michael was 12, Susan was 10, and little Jennifer was just 8. I remember that rainy October day in 1978, standing in front of an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, thinking, Gloria, you're either crazy or a genius. Turns out I was a little bit of both. I took out a loan against our house and started a small organic fertilizer company, Solutions. It sounded impressive for a business that began in a garage. I worked 18-hour days, studied chemistry at night while the kids slept, and practically begged farmers to try my product. The first 5 years were hell. I remember counting every penny, making dinner out of potatoes and canned beans for 3 days straight, crying in the shower so the kids wouldn't see my tears. But I never gave up, never. By 1985, our little company was supplying fertilizers to 5 states. By 1990, we opened a research lab and patented a revolutionary formula that boosted crop yields by 30%. By 2000, Solutions was one of the leading organic agriculture companies in the country. Over those years, my kids grew up alongside the business. They saw my sleepless nights, my sacrifices, my obsession with building something meaningful. In the summers, they helped out in the warehouses, learning the business from the ground up. I thought they valued what I was building for them. How naive I was. Michael got his MBA from and came back to the company as CFO. He was smart, ambitious, but there was something cold and calculating about him. Susan graduated from Yale Law and became the company's general counsel. She was always the shrewdest of the 3. And Jennifer, my youngest, studied marketing at and took over the sales department. By 2020, the company was worth about $6 million, and I was ready to gradually hand over the reins to my kids. I started delegating more responsibilities, dreaming of watching my life's work flourish in their hands. But the first warning bells rang in 2021. Mom, you're 70 years old, Michael said one evening after a board meeting. Maybe it's time to think about retirement. I laughed. Retirement? Michael, I built this company when you were still in diapers. I'm not retiring. But Mom, Susan chimed in, always the diplomat, you've earned a break. We can handle the company just fine. I'm sure you can, but I'm not ready to step away. Their faces, God, if I'd paid attention to their faces back then, there was something I didn't want to see, impatience, greed, and something even darker. Over the next few months, the pressure only grew. They started questioning every decision I made in meetings, talking about the need for fresh ideas and modern management approaches. Michael kept hinting that the market was overvalued and that now was the perfect time to cash out. Mom, Tech Corporation is offering an incredible price, Jennifer told me in the winter of 2022, $6,200,000. You could buy a beautiful house in Florida, travel, enjoy life. I enjoy life right here, I replied. This company is my life. But Mom, Michael said, putting his hand on my shoulder with such fake concern it made me nauseous. What if something happens to you? A stroke, a heart attack. We can't run the company the way you do. It's better to sell now while the price is high. I realized they orchestrated an entire campaign against me. They'd studied Tech's offer, done a market analysis, even hired a family business consultant who happened to recommend selling. But the most painful part was their coordination. They acted as a united front against me. My own children, whom I'd raised, educated, given everything to, they'd turned into corporate vultures circling what I'd built. No, I said firmly, I'm not selling the company. That's when they showed their true colors. Mom, we need to talk, Michael said in March 2023, summoning me to the conference room. All 3 of them sat on one side of the table, me on the other, like an interrogation. We've received a report from Dr. Susan said, sliding some papers toward me. He believes the stress of running the company could seriously harm your health. My hands trembled as I picked up the documents. Doctor, our family doctor whom I'd trusted for 20 years, recommended I reduce stress and consider stepping away from active business operations. You got to my doctor, I whispered, unable to believe my eyes. We just asked him to assess how your work affects your health, Jennifer said. Mom, we're worried about you. Lies, it was all lies, and we all knew it. Plus, Michael added, we have a preliminary agreement with Tech. They're willing to raise the offer to $6,500,000. That's $500,000 more than their initial bid. We've already prepared everything, Susan said. We just need your signature. I looked at them, unable to believe it. My children, my own children, were planning to sell my company behind my back. And what about me? I asked. What do I do after the sale? You'll enjoy a well-deserved retirement, Jennifer said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You've earned it. And you? They exchanged glances, and Michael cleared his throat. Well, Tech offered us positions as top managers, with raises, of course. There it was, the truth. They didn't just want to sell my company, they wanted to profit from it, leaving me with nothing. And you think I'll agree to this? Mom, Michael leaned forward, do you really have a choice? The three of us own 49% of the company's shares. You own 51%, but if we present a medical report stating you're unfit to make business decisions. The threat hung in the air like poison. They were threatening to have me declared incompetent. You wouldn't dare, I whispered. We don't want it to come to that, Susan said softly, but if you stand in the way of what's best for everyone. I stood up, took the papers, and slowly tore them in half. Get out of my office, I said quietly, all three of you now. But they didn't leave. They stayed, looking at me with a mix of pity and contempt that made me want to scream. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be, Michael said. We all get what we want. You get money and peace. We get to take the business forward. Without me. Well, yes, without you. Those words hit like a death sentence. The next few weeks were a nightmare. They waged a full-on war against me. They started undermining my decisions in front of employees, spreading rumors about my declining health, even arranging a chance meeting with a tech representative at my favorite restaurant. Worst of all, some employees started looking at me differently. People who'd worked with me for years began doubting my abilities. The poison my children spread was working. But the final straw was the shareholders' meeting. They brought in Doctor as an independent expert. They presented a financial analysis claiming the company had peaked in value. They even had a psychologist talk about natural resistance to change in older individuals. Then Michael stood up and delivered a speech that broke my heart. My mother is an incredible woman. She built this company from nothing, sacrificed everything for our success. But now, out of love for her, we must help her make a difficult choice. A choice between clinging to the past and securing a future for all of us. He cried. My son shed crocodile tears, talking about his love for me while sharpening a knife for my back. The vote was a foregone conclusion. Thanks to the complex share structure and a few minor investors my kids had somehow swayed, the sale passed by a slim margin. I lost, for the first time in my life, I lost the battle for what I'd built with my own hands. Mom, Jennifer said after the vote, approaching me with red eyes, this is for the best, you'll see. I looked at her, my youngest daughter, whom I taught to walk, comforted after her first heartbreak, bought a prom dress for, and realized I no longer knew this person. You're right, I said calmly, I will see. The deal with Tech Corporation closed in June 2023, $6,500,000 for the company I'd built over 45 years. Under the terms, I was to receive $3,300,000 as the majority shareholder. The rest was split among my kids based on their shares, but the money was what hurt most. Mom, we want to throw a little party, Susan told me a week before the deal closed, to celebrate a new chapter for all of us. I'm not really in the mood for parties, I replied. But Mom, it's important for the family to show we're still united. United? What irony. I agreed to come, thinking it would be a small family dinner, maybe a chance to reconcile, to find a way forward despite everything. But when I arrived at the River Oaks Country Club, a place I couldn't have afforded to step foot in back in the day, I realized I was wrong. It wasn't a family party, it was a corporate event. The entire hall was decked out with tech corporation banners. All the new company's top executives were there, including CEO Robert Huntington, my old competitor. There were press, local business leaders, even the mayor. And me, they sat me at a corner table, like an honored guest to be displayed but not heard. "Welcome to the celebration of a new partnership," Huntington announced into the microphone. "Today, we mark the joining of two great companies and the start of an exciting future." Applause, laughter, clinking glasses. Then Michael stood up. "I want to say a few words about our mother, Gloria," he began, and all eyes turned to me. Mom built solutions from nothing and turned it into a thriving business. But most importantly, she taught us that sometimes the boldest decision is knowing when to pass the torch. More applause. I sat there, smiling, feeling like a mannequin in a shop window. "Today, we begin a new chapter," Michael continued. "A chapter where tech's innovation meets solutions, traditions. We promise to make this company even bigger, even more successful." "What about Gloria?" someone shouted from the crowd. "What are her plans?" Michael smiled and looked at me. "Mom earned her rest. She's planning to travel, maybe write a book about her business experience." Lies, we hadn't even discussed my plans. Then Susan spoke. "We're grateful to Mom for laying the foundation for our success. But now it's time to show what the younger generation can do." And finally, Jennifer, "Mom always told us, if you're not growing, you're dying. Today, we're growing. We're taking what she gave us and making it even better." They spoke about me in the past tense, as if I were already dead. The worst part was their sincerity. They genuinely believed they were doing the right thing. In their eyes, I was an obstacle to progress, an old woman who couldn't grasp modern business realities. After the speeches, the mingling began. People came up to me, shook my hand, said canned phrases about my legacy and well-earned rest. But I saw it in their eyes. To them, I was already history. The most painful moment came when I overheard Michael talking to a tech executive. "Honestly, we're glad she agreed to sell," Michael said. "Mom's a wonderful woman, but her management methods were hopelessly outdated. Now we can really modernize the company." "And how did she take the sale?" "She resisted at first, but we explained the market realities. In the end, she understood it was the best decision for everyone." Market realities, best decision for everyone. I quietly stood and headed for the exit. No one even noticed me leave. At my own farewell party. Huntington caught up with me in the parking lot. "Mrs.," he said, approaching with a glass of champagne in hand, "leaving already?" "This party clearly isn't for me," I replied. He nodded as if he understood. "You know, I've always admired what you built. Solutions was a worthy competitor." "Was," I echoed bitterly. "But time moves on, Mrs. Sometimes you have to know when to step away. Your kids are capable people. They'll help us take the company to the next level. And I'll sit at home knitting." Huntington laughed. "You could write a book, How to Build a Business from Scratch or something like that. I'm sure plenty of people would want to read your story." "My story not over yet," I said quietly. "Of course," he agreed, clearly not grasping what I meant. "You've got plenty of good years ahead." I got in my car and drove home, feeling like I'd been buried alive. My own children hadn't just sold my company, they'd erased me from its history. Things got worse over the next few weeks. The new owners began restructuring. They fired several key employees who'd been with me for years, replacing them with their own people. They changed the logo, renamed products, even tore down the memorial plaque for my late husband that had hung in the main office since 1995. But the worst blow came 2 months after the sale. I found out by chance from Martin Kelly, my former chief engineer, who'd also been let go during the restructuring. "Mrs.," he said over the phone, his voice shaking with anger, "do you know what they did to your office?" "No," I said, already dreading the answer. "They turned it into a break room, put in a gaming console and a coffee machine, said the space should serve the team." My office, the place where I'd spent countless hours planning the company's future, making the biggest decisions of my life, where I kept photos of all our achievements over the decades. turned into a game room. And your kids, Martin asked, how could they let this happen? They didn't let it happen, I said quietly. They made it happen. That evening, I drove to the office. It was now called Tech Midwest Division. New sign, new security, new faces in the windows. I stood in the parking lot, staring at the building that had once been the embodiment of my dreams, now a mausoleum for them. That's when I realized my kids hadn't just betrayed me, they'd erased me, as if Gloria never existed. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't some ordinary 70-year-old retiree who'd accept her fate. I was the woman who built an empire from nothing, a woman who fought and won when all the odds were against her. And if my kids thought this story was over, they were dead wrong. The planning took me almost a year my children thought was my well-deserved retirement. They couldn't imagine their old mother sitting in her home office, crafting the most intricate business plan of her life. First, I needed to understand what was happening to the company under its new management. Luckily, I still had contacts with a few former employees willing to share information. What I learned exceeded my wildest expectations. Tech hadn't bought my company to grow it, they'd bought it to eliminate a competitor. They planned to phase out organic fertilizer production and switch to cheaper chemical alternatives. My patented formulas were to be accidentally lost. The research lab, the pride of my company, was shut down 6 months after the purchase. And my kids, they got their promotions, but quickly realized they'd become highly paid puppets. Michael was named Regional CFO, a fancy title that meant he reported to Tech's main CFO and couldn't make any significant decisions without approval from headquarters. Susan became Senior Legal Counsel for Regional Affairs, a glorified title for someone mostly handling layoffs and closing inefficient business lines. Jennifer was made Director of Marketing for Special Products, but the special products were a line of cheap chemical fertilizers Tech wanted to push under the brand. The irony was they were slowly destroying the very legacy they'd wanted to lead. Within a year, Tech Midwest Division, as my former company was now called, was showing losses. Several major clients left due to declining product quality. Market share dropped by 20%. Employees were quitting or being fired. And that's when I made my move. Through my lawyer, Robert, a man I'd trusted since my husband's estate was settled, I set up an offshore company, Phoenix Investments Limited. Officially, it was owned by a Panamanian firm, which in turn belonged to a trust in the islands. Tracing it back to me was nearly impossible. Phoenix Investments began quietly buying up Tech Corporation shares on the open market, small batches through different brokers to avoid attention. By early 2023, I'd acquired 12% of Tech's shares through Phoenix. It was enough to start applying pressure, but not enough for control. I operated in the shadows. Nobody, including my kids, knew I was behind Phoenix. Through proxy brokers and anonymous deals, I kept building my stake while gathering intel on Tech's inner workings. Thanks to old contacts like Martin Kelly, I learned Tech was in worse shape than their reports suggested. They'd bought my company to eliminate competition, not to grow. Organic production was being phased out, the lab was shuttered, and my formulas had disappeared from the archives. They were pushing low-quality chemical fertilizers, tanking the brand's reputation. My kids, so proud of their new titles, soon realized they'd been duped. Michael had no real power. Susan was stuck handling layoffs. Jennifer was marketing garbage under the name I'd built. Tech Midwest Division was losing clients, quality was plummeting, prices were rising, and the reputation was in tatters. Employees were leaving, and those who stayed complained about the corporate culture. My kids were trapped, highly paid puppets with no influence. That's when I kicked things into high gear. Through Phoenix, I orchestrated leaks to the press, articles about mismanagement and loss of tradition at Tech. My analysts, sharp young folks from Chicago I'd hired through Robert, dug deeper. They found evidence of inflated financial reports and hidden debts. I anonymously fed this to business publications, and soon Tech stock began to slide. Michael was the first to sense something was wrong. He called me in December, his voice tense. "Mom, have you heard what's going on with Tech? The stock's dropping, investors are nervous." I was sitting in my home office, watching their stock chart on my screen. "Oh, honey, I'm retired, reading books, baking pies. What's happening with you?" "Someone bought a big chunk of shares. There's talk of a hostile takeover." How fascinating, I said, hiding a smile. What are you going to do? I don't know, Huntington's panicking, says it could be a competitor. Maybe the market's teaching you a lesson, I said and hung up. Soon, Phoenix owned 18% of tech shares. I started pushing for changes in the board of directors through my representatives. Huntington tried to fight back, but the pressure was mounting. Investors demanded an audit and the press kept publishing. Susan came to me in February. She looked exhausted, her perfect makeup unable to hide the bags under her eyes. "Mom, it's a nightmare," she said, collapsing onto my couch. "They want to fire us, say we're inefficient." "Inefficient?" I asked, pouring her tea. "I thought you were the young generation leading the company into the future." She looked down. "We were wrong. We thought we could handle it, but without you, everything's falling apart." "Without me," I echoed, staring at her. "You wanted me gone. Remember doctors, the medical reports." She blushed. "That was a mistake. We were stupid." "Greedy," I corrected. "You wanted money and power, and what did you get?" Susan was silent. I could see her struggling, but I didn't let her off the hook. "What do you want, Susan, for me to save you?" "Yes," she whispered, "please." "I'll think about it," I said, "but don't expect things to go back to how they were." Jennifer showed up a week later. She burst into my house, hugged me, and sobbed. "Mom, forgive us. We didn't know what we were doing. We've lost everything." I pulled back. "You lost my company, my legacy. You erased me." "We didn't mean to. We thought it was for everyone's good." "For your good," I said. "You sold my life for your titles." She fell to her knees. "Please, Mom, give us a chance to fix it." I looked at her, my baby, my youngest. My heart ached, but I didn't soften. A chance has to be earned. Michael came last in March. He was composed, but I could see he was broken. "Mom, we need your help," he said, standing in my doorway. "The company's sinking. Huntington's blaming us." "And he's right," I replied. "You sold my business to people who destroyed it." "We know we messed up, but we can fix it." "Fix it?" I laughed. "You don't even understand what you've done." "Then touch us," he said quietly. "Please." I stayed silent. Their eyes held sincerity, but I remembered the sting of betrayal. My revenge wasn't complete yet. By April 2023, Phoenix owned 25% of Tech's shares. I demanded an extraordinary board meeting. Huntington tried to resist, but spooked investors backed me. At the meeting in May, I revealed my hand. Via video call, sitting in my old office, which I'd bought back through third parties, I announced, "Ladies, and I am Gloria, the primary shareholder of Phoenix Investments and the new controlling owner of Tech Corporation." Huntington went pale. "Gloria, that's impossible." "Very possible," I replied. "You stole my company, I took yours." The room froze. My kids, sitting off to the side as regional managers, stared at me, mouths agape. I fired Huntington first. "Robert, your services are no longer needed. Your management was a disaster." Then I turned to my kids. "Michael, Susan, Jennifer, you're fired, effective immediately." Michael jumped up. "Mom, you can't." "I can," I said. "You taught me how." Susan tried to argue. "We're your family." "Family doesn't betray," I said. "Security, escort them out." They left, and I stayed to rebuild what they'd destroyed. The next day, they showed up at my house, all three with flowers and apologies. I let them in but kept my distance. "Moms, we know we're to blame," Michael began. "We want to make it right." "Make it right?" I asked. "You sold my life. How do you fix that?" "Susan, we understand your pain. Give us a chance." "Jennifer, we see now you were right. The company needs you, and so do we." I looked at them, my children, whom I'd raised, loved, sacrificed everything for. They'd betrayed me, but now they stood before me, broken and sincere. "You think apologies are enough?" I asked. "You erased my name, turned my office into a game room." Michael hung his head. "We were idiots, but we're family. Family forgives." I walked to the window, looking out at my garden. "Family learns. You thought I was weak, old, useless, but I took back my company, and I won't let you destroy it again." They were silent. I'm bringing back solutions, I continued. Organic, quality, integrity, but you'll have to prove you're worthy of being part of it. Jennifer, how? You start from scratch like I did in 1978. Warehouse work, lab work, no privileges, minimum wage. If you handle it, we'll talk. Susan nodded, I'm in. Jennifer, me too, I want to learn. Michael hesitated but said, okay, we'll do it your way. I smiled, then welcome, but remember, this is my company, and this time we play by my rules. Their first day was in June 2023. I picked the old warehouse, the one where I started in a garage. Michael, Susan, and Jennifer showed up in expensive clothes, but I handed them coveralls. Today, you're packing fertilizers, I said, like I did 45 years ago. They worked in silence, hauling bags, checking labels, cleaning equipment. By the end of the day, they were dirty and exhausted. Mom, I didn't know it was this hard, Michael said. Now you do, I replied, and this is just the start. Over the next weeks, I rotated them through departments. Michael counted inventory, Susan reviewed contracts under supervision, Jennifer cold-called clients. They grumbled, but I was unrelenting. Meanwhile, I rebuilt the company, renamed it Solutions, brought back Martin Kelly and other old employees, reopened the lab, restored my formulas from personal archives. We launched a new product, biofertilizers with microorganisms. Clients started coming back. By July, sales were up 20%. The kids learned, Michael stopped arguing with workers, Susan learned patience, Jennifer won back a major client with her persistence. At night, I sat in my office looking at Richard's portrait. We did it, honey, I whispered, and the kids are learning. In August 2023, we had a family dinner, the first in 2 years without tension. They talked about their work, how they saw the business differently now. Mom, you were right, Jennifer said. We didn't appreciate what you built. Now you do, I said, and don't forget it. I promoted them, Michael to analytics, Susan to legal, Jennifer to marketing, but I stayed in charge. Today, August 2023, I'm 72. The company's growing, clients are returning, and my kids are different, humbler, more grateful, stronger. We're a team. Revenge was sweet, but forgiveness is. I reclaimed my legacy and saved my family. Gloria's story is one of struggle, betrayal, and rebirth, and it's not over yet. Did you enjoy this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know where you're reading from. Don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories. See you next time.